Hello and welcome to another X-Ray Tech video. Today we're going to be creating a Google Doc meeting agenda in just a few seconds. Now in our last video, you can check out how we did this with a Google slide deck to show a weekly meeting agenda. And we're going to be extending that automation using the same automation methods inside of Google Docs. So you'll have a doc and a presentation with the same information that you can send out on your weekly agenda in just a few seconds. So let's get into it. Now, from a software perspective for this tutorial, you're gonna need Google Docs, you're gonna need a Zapier account, and you're gonna need an Airtable account. If you're unfamiliar with Airtable or Zapier or Google Docs, you can click on those links in the resources below. All right, so we're gonna go right into Google Docs right now and actually set up our weekly meeting agenda. So make your headings, make your body copy here. Make sure that you just create a normal Google Doc. It does not need to be a template. This is a little definitional mix-up that we have between Zapier's use of the word template and Google's use of the word template. It does not need to be a template in the eyes of Google. What we're gonna do is actually reference the document ID, which is this item that's highlighted here, from 1F all the way to TS. That is the ID of the document. So we're gonna reuse that later on. So when we look at our meeting agenda here, you see that there's curly braces and words inside of the curly braces. This is essentially a slot that we will be inserting a variable into. So it's really important that you do not include a space inside of the curly braces. Zapier will not recognize that as a field that a variable could be inserted into. So be sure that there is no spaces inside of the curly braces. And also know that whatever variable you insert into here, it's going to adopt the styling of the variable inside the curly braces. So if this is, size 24 font, it's gonna fill in today's date with size 24 font. And you'll see this sort of at the output of this tutorial. So I think we're pretty good on this. We can head over to our Airtable and actually see, where are these variables coming from. Inside of Airtable, you'll see, if you watched the last tutorial, this looks very, very similar. It's all the same information, and that's done on purpose, right? So we have a form that someone on your team or yourself is gonna be able to fill out with the meeting date, the progress updates, the graph, whatever KPI summary or next steps that you have. And when this data is filled out inside of this form, it's going to go into this grid view inside of Airtable. Now, we're in our weekly meeting slide deck tutorial table here inside of our tutorials base. And you'll notice that all of the information that was inside of the Airtable form is also inside of the grid view. This is intentional. This is the way that Airtable works. The one thing I will highlight is the next meeting. This is a formula field. So we're actually creating new data inside of Airtable and just adding 7 days to whatever today's date was that you filled out the meeting agenda form in already. So the meeting date is 7/27. The next meeting date is going to be 8/3, and that is a calculation here. So the one thing I really want to highlight between Airtable and Google Docs is that every single slot variable field that you created inside of your weekly agenda in Google Docs needs to have a corresponding field inside of Airtable. That is how this whole templating system works. Step one, have that Google Doc the way that you want it to be, styled with all the variables that you want to insert. Step two, create this Airtable with a form and a grid view that's going to be able to be leveraged in Zapier to actually insert the variables into the right fields inside your Google Doc. Let's get into Zapier and actually see what this automation looks like. So the first step here is going to be the same as our previous automation, right? No need to switch up the trigger. It's going to be in the tutorial space, weekly meeting, slide deck, and of course that grid view that we were looking at. So when I do the test trigger, I just did this. I just loaded a little bit more and grabbed that good test data. It's essential that you have good test data for the construction of your automation. If you do not have any test data, you don't have any data in your Airtable, you are going to need to go back to Airtable, fill out the form, make sure that you have real test data, because it's not going to be possible to build an automation without test data inside of Zapier. So you have to have that there. So notice that I added a second step here in step 2 around the date. This is just a quirk of the no-code world right now, where the meeting date has hyphens coming out of Airtable, even though inside of Airtable it has slashes. I like slashes. I want to make the date have slashes as well. So this is a simple format selector. It's a formatting step inside of Zapier. You select formatter by Zapier right here just to show you. The event is date and time. And then you have the ability to insert that variable from step 1. That's going to be the time and date right here, the meeting date. And then we're going to convert that to the slashes instead, UTC time, and we'll test that action. And when we retest that action, there it is, right? We converted that to the slashes. Simple step, but it's still one that can be really, really helpful if you're particular about your formatting. So this Google Slides step, if you want to get into this a little bit more detail, check out the last video. We're going to skip this for now and go straight to the Google Doc. So for the Google Doc, we're going to select the action create document from template. Now, I talked a little bit about this earlier. The template inside of Google Docs and the template inside of Zapier are two different definitions of template. So you do not need to create a Google Doc template inside of Google Docs. You only need to identify the document that you want to templatize inside of Zapier. Just to reiterate this in a little bit more clear way, I think, you see here that we selected weekly meeting agenda, and then you see this huge alphanumeric code underneath of the weekly meeting agenda. Going back to our Google Doc to illustrate this, that huge alphanumeric code is right there. It's in the URL bar already of the document that you're working with. So we could actually go back to this for the sake of the example, copy this alphanumeric code, and instead click on custom and paste that code there. And you see that all of the fields are still there. They still stay, which is really important. And just to go back here, maybe we say meeting date inside of this document, we say meeting date today. And I'll just add that as a variable. And when I go back into my Zapier automation and I click on refresh fields, we're looking at this meeting date field right here. And I click on refresh fields, boom, two things happen. The original meeting date gets kicked to the bottom and it's identified as an extra field and it doesn't exist anymore because we changed that variable inside of our Google Doc to include the word today. So Zapier thinks that's totally a different thing. It doesn't realize that one transitioned into the next. So we actually need to go back into our second step here and grab that date again. And we'll insert that date right here and we can remove these extra fields and then we are all set. And that is good to go. So we'll hit continue here and we're just gonna retest and review. And we're hoping for that green bar right across the top. And then we're going to hold our breath for a second, there it is. And then we're gonna go for the alternate link. I talked about this in the last tutorial as well. This alternate link is actually the link that you care about. If you're ever sending this to somebody or want somebody to get the output of an automation, you actually want that alternate link. So I'm gonna paste that into my incognito tab here, and there you go. You see the date inserted beautifully. You see the progress updates, you see the KPIs, the next steps, and even that next meeting date, which was calculated inside of our Airtable. So voila, this document is now ready to rock. Well, I hope this video has been helpful. Now you know how to create both a Google Slides presentation and a Google Doc in just a few seconds from a simple Airtable form. Please like and subscribe to this video if this was helpful to you. We're on a mission to save 1 billion hours of mindless human work So copying and pasting, we're kicking that to the curb. So as always, links and resources are in the description down below, and don't forget, keep the flow.